I'm here to tell you a story about a young man who felt a call to government, who felt a call to business, felt a call to public service. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we ended up here. If I had heard that introduction years ago, I wouldn't have believed it. Even sitting here listening to him tell that story, I kind of shake my head and say, God, you're amazing. That's the kind of things that happen when you step out by faith. Is there anybody here that knows what it's like to jump out of the boat? To hear that voice saying, come. And if it's you, Lord, call me to come. And he says, come. Are you ready to jump out of the boat? I grew up in California, as he mentioned. I grew up very, very rich. Not financially, but I grew up very rich. Rich in family, rich in faith. Come on. Very, very, very rich. And faith and community was always number one in our life. And I remember the sacrifices that our family made for the community and for the church. That was always number one. As he mentioned, first generation college grad. I went from homeschool to a community college to marrying my beautiful wife, who's here, of 21 years now this year. Yes. And 3 beautiful children as well. Nobody claps for the children. That's okay. It's all right. They're out in the car, so we got to hurry. But we're so glad. I got into Harvard as a first generation college student in my family, as a distance student. And then was encouraged to run for student president, became student president, first time that had ever happened as a distant student. And I remember feeling that calling. I remember sitting with my dad in a booth and saying, Dad, I feel this calling to business. We had started a few different businesses. I feel this calling to business. I can't quite explain it, but I feel it. And I also feel this calling to public service, and I can't quite explain it, but I feel it. And he said, I don't quite understand it all either, son, but I believe God's going to use you for greater things in the kingdom and in our world than we can imagine right now. And he encouraged me to head off, and we moved 3,000 miles away and later ran in 8 elections at Harvard, later became Harvard-wide student president, and was selected to give the commencement address. I finished my undergraduate studies there and my master's studies there. I worked in Congress between my first and second year, and then this amazing moment happened. That's me standing right there in front of 30,000 people. If you'd showed me this picture 5 years earlier, I would have had no clue how to get there. It's a true American dream kind of story. And then they tell you the day before that former President George H.W. Bush is going to be sitting next to you, and then Mayor Michael Bloomberg and Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. And you have to stand and deliver this speech with no notes. And it goes back to the 1600s. And I stood and talked about when George Washington came to that very spot in 1775 to take command of the troops. And he wrote back to Martha and said, I feel a kind of destiny and a divine hand is guiding me to this service. What a moment that was. I ended the speech saying, let's go serve the world with passion. I was selected as a presidential fellow, and we moved down to D.C. with our 2 children at the time. And I worked from the White House, the Pentagon on innovation projects, bringing those same best private sector principles to come work in government. I also work on a lot of church projects and help churches launch new programs to think more like, what if we operated more like a business in the fact that we were serving people every day in their communities where they live? Don't you think it's crazy that God would build this world so we spend 80% or more of our life doing something that feels disconnected from his purpose? Why would he build it that way? But for so many people, that's how we live. As soon as I clock out, as soon as I quit this job, then I can do the real meaningful work. But I believe there's a better way. And I'm so excited to be here at BAM because I know you're all about that. This is business as the mission. And so I felt that calling again, seeing more needs around the world and that entrepreneurial itch. You all know what that feels like. And we launched this company called Impact Junkie, and that's taken us all around the world. We've been sleeping in rainforests, in the jungles in Central America, working with pastors and entrepreneurs out in the villages to not only get donations, but to actually get investment and start businesses to help all the families and their communities and then pay that money back plus interest to the churches. What a thought. Just let that simmer in some of these entrepreneur minds. And we've been in Central Asia eating sheep eyeballs. Has anyone had sheep eyeballs? Well, we made a covenant that we'd look after one another. It was very sweet. And then, yeah, it's a true story. To palaces in the Middle East and working with former gang members and felons all across the U.S. and finding that power of free markets and free people to solve the world's biggest, hairiest, most audacious problems. And we also developed a training framework. You can go to impactjunkie.co, access it for free, go through it. It's also a course at Johns Hopkins. I teach at a master's level course there. You know, I like to think of business this way. A business is just a group of people who've made a covenant with one another that we're gonna go find other people who have problems and bring sustainable solutions to those problems together. Doesn't that sound like what we're called to do? I think so as well. I remember one of these moments, I was in Uzbekistan. The State Department asked me to go over and speak right before they had just elected a new president, and they're coming out of the Soviet era. And they're trying to focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. And they introduced me before the new president, they introduced me as, this is Philip Harding from the country of dreams. The country of dreams. And the more you travel around the world and the more you experience, you realize how blessed we are here in America. We live in a nation that the founding principles were this unbelievable idea, this amazing idea that our rights come from God, not from a government, telling us when and how to do things. And that we can be the solution and help one another. It gets back to we the people. And so I felt this calling to public service, haven't been able to shake it. God brought some amazing people in our life, and I said, well, God, if you bring the right people and you bring at the right time and the fleece is wet on both sides and upside down, then we'll talk about it. And that led to some amazing people that God has brought into our path saying, if you had the team, if you had the people, would you run? And all the oxygen sucks out of the room. We were with Charlie Kirk a month before he was killed. It was a very moving experience. I got to see a lot behind the scenes, the authenticity and the prayer and the hunger and the desire for God. I see this rising generation searching for truth, searching for what is real. We have people who are dying to get here. If you live in the United States of America, you already have a golden ticket. In the history of humanity, you are so blessed. If we can keep it, it's time for us to rise up and be the answer that our society needs. And so people say politics, that's a scary word. Like business, that's a scary word for some people, not for you all here. But politics, a lot of people define it as poly, meaning many, and ticks, meaning blood-sucking creatures. And you would say, why in the world would you think of going into that place? But when it's a calling, you don't ask, you just keep stepping. And in fact, you look at the root word of what politics actually means. Polis, it's the same root word, police. That's for the police department, or Annapolis, or Indianapolis, or Decapolis. The place where Legion was on the other side, where Jesus in Mark chapter 4, verse 35 said, let us cross over to the other side. And he called his disciples after this wonderful moment of explaining these parables to him. And we can get so comfortable in our beautiful buildings and in our comfortable services and what feels good and comfortable. But he's telling you today, will you let us cross over to the other side? Number one, let us means he will never leave you. He will never forsake you. Number two, he's looking at you and saying, will you let us? Will you step into the boat and be willing to go through the storm? Because what's on the other side of the lake, there was Legion. This man filled with demons, possessed, miserable, and the only solution society could give him was to put him in chains and to have him go live in the cemetery. That's what the answer that the society is giving today to this rising generation who is searching, who is hurting. It's time for us to step over to the other side to answer that call. And I want to encourage you all to step up and run for Congress. We got a couple takers. All right, well, if you're not going to do that, then why don't you support your local friendly congressman who is running? We have been working with faith leaders all across the country. There is a desire. There are pastors who've stepped up and said, I've never been involved in politics, the affairs of the city. Well, let's not get political. You mean you don't want to be involved in the affairs of the city? Isn't that the very thing that the church is here to do? For that single mother who's found herself in this unthinkable position and feels like she only has one choice that society has given her? Can we step in and be that solution? Will you let us step over to the other side? For that family that's being ripped apart, will we step in and be the answer and be that family? In Virginia, where I'm running, we've got a new governor that's been put in. She ran on affordability, and the first thing they did was raise taxes all across the board. Then they ran a new redistricting referendum that's been taking a lot of the national attention. I'm sure you've heard about it. And then the next two amendments that they put in, number one was abortion up until birth. That could happen just by a medical professional based on the mental health of the woman can just make the decision. Up until birth. That's happening on our watch, ladies and gentlemen. Church, that is happening on our watch. What are we going to do with what he has given us? The second amendment that's going to the Constitution, the Virginia Constitution this November, the second one that is their priority is introducing gender, taking man and woman out of the Constitution for marriage and introducing gender, which is opening all kinds of restrictions for transgenderism and these kinds of things that are happening in our society. It's time for us to engage into these spheres, ladies and gentlemen. Church, it's time for us to be there. This is happening right now. God has called us to the other side. It's time to step in. What will you do with what you've been given? So here's a QR code. Please pray. I'm going to ask you, please, please, please pray. We are facing it every day. We just officially launched the campaign last Tuesday, and it has been an unbelievable ride. We've had national media coverage. We would love for you to pray. Please, number one, pray. If you go to that QR code, you can also donate. It takes a lot of money. I was meeting with the chief of staff to Senator Banks, who's the senator in Indiana. And the chief of staff, his dad was a Pentecostal preacher. He said, I love the Pentecostals. They are so fantastic. He said, I'll tell you what, if the Pentecostals could come together, that's millions of people across our nation, you could elect a member to Congress every election cycle in a different district. Number one, it takes funding. You need funding. You need hundreds of thousands of dollars. In the seat that I'm running in, the Democrat raised over $17 million to get that seat. The Republican was just over $3 million. And it came down to less than 2% of the vote, 8,000 votes or so. It was tight. Number one, you need the funding. So please donate. Number two, you've got a mass body, a network across our nation that can come together and elect people into our offices at our national level, okay? You may say, well, why Mississippi? Why Virginia? It's the United States of America. It is a national seat, the U.S. House of Representatives in Congress. So join us, be part of this movement. You can organize events here. You can share. Please go to the code. There's a form there and sign up. There's so much more to share. I'm so grateful for you all. Thank you for the opportunity, Pastor. God bless you all. God bless America. God bless Mississippi. God bless Virginia. Let us cross over to the other side.